Why buy an apartment now? Fully furnished, stamp duty exempt, Help to Buy available from £195,000. Visit galliardhomes.com. Terms and conditions apply.
This is LBC with Eddie Mair. Call 0345 6060 973.
Here's what our correspondent Rachel Venables writes on the LBC website. Over the past 24 hours, I've been inundated with messages from desperate, angry people trapped in unsellable homes. They range from residents in high-rises to those who live in short blocks of flats in places like Kent, Birmingham, Manchester, Leeds, Cardiff. All of them, in the last few months, optimistically put their flats on the market and found a buyer, only to be told their home is worthless. Rachel writes, the crisis has its roots in the aftermath of the Grenfell Tower fire and the realisation that thousands of buildings had a similar dangerous cladding. Last winter, the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors brought out the EWS1 form as a way of grading the safety of tower blocks with cladding. It was meant to be for buildings with cladding over 18 metres tall, but at the start of this year, government regulations changed, and now lenders want this form for smaller buildings too. It's thought around 300,000 buildings might need this EWS1 form, but there are only about 300 inspectors to carry out the work. If you're caught up in this, give me a call. 0345 6060 973. Deepa is in Bermondsey. Hi, Deepa. What's happening with you? Welcome.
Hi, Eddie. Thank you for having me on.
What's happening?
I bought my shared ownership home 10 years ago through a housing association. I'm on a 6th-floor flat in Bermondsey and now have a family, 3 young children under 5, and we want to move. Once the fire at Grenfell had happened, our housing association was fairly quick to get some scaffolding up and remove the ACM and all the cladding that was on the insulation. They tore everything off. They replaced it after waiting for, it must have been about 7 or 8 months where we had basically a naked building. They were waiting for the government to work out what they should replace it with, but because it took so long, they made the decision just to go with the most non-combustible material that they could find. So they went with Power-Lawn Flame-Out, rock wall insulation, and a Lucabond. It was put on, and when the work was being done, we had a lot of contact with the contractors, who were doing the work, but also with the housing association as well. And they said, don't worry, once it's done, you'll have the certification for it. Everything's going to be up to scratch. It will be inspected every step of the way. And we did see inspections being done every step of the way. However, to this day, we've not had any kind of documentation to cover that or anything to say that the work has been done, is completed, is fully inspected, and, you're fire regulated and everything's fine now. We have just recently started the sales process, or wanted to start the sales process, and it was only when I contacted the sales team that they told us we may have an issue because we do not have, or we may not be able to get you the EWS certificate, and a letter was then given to us to say that this may not be possible. But considering all this work was done, surely there has to be some kind of inspection out there. We've contacted several departments at the Housing Association to try and get hold of the O&M folder, which is basically the folder that holds all safety data sheets for every single bit of material that is attached to your building. So we're trying to get hold of that, at the very least, if we cannot have the EWS. And nobody seems to know anything about it. And
Deepa, what were these inspectors doing that you saw working?
They were watching when each piece of material was put up. So they'd come and watch when the Power-Lawn Flame-Out membrane was put on, and then they'd sign that off. Say every few square sections of it. Then they'd watch the rock wall being put on. They'd watch the Lucabond cladding being put back on.
But you don't know whether once all the work was done, there was a formal inspection to give it the all clear.
I believe that there was. I've been told by the contractors that there was, but, we haven't seen the paperwork behind it. And, this was back in 2018. We're now 2020, and it's only when I ask for this information that we're being told. Nobody has actually contacted us and said, I'm sorry, we don't think we can get hold of it, or here is your paperwork for the work that was done. And we were one of the first buildings to have been taken care of.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you should have been one of the lucky ones.
Well, we should be, but, we're still in the same boat where, we've been told we may not be able to help you out. And
what's the effect on your life, Dee? Because you want to move out, you need more room. Have you had interest in the flat?
No, because we've not even put it on the market
Right.
yet. Because the very start of the process had, and it was only last month, we were told you won't be able to get the letter or the certification. This is obviously, it's given us an unknown amount of stress, thinking, I bought this place 10 years ago, thinking, okay, this is, a great starter home, but obviously we're not going to be here forever. We'll make a little bit of money out of it, and then we'll be able to move on. And, the shared ownership scheme was sold to us as a way it was the only way I could purchase something near to where I worked. And I honestly, I wish I'd never even thought about it. I wish that I'd held out and just saved up, kept saving up, and lived in a horrible little flat that I was at the time, and kept renting and kept saving up until I could afford a place of my own which didn't have any of these problems. And I wish that I'd, gone for a house instead. But to be honest, that's hindsight, and it's a fine thing. It's just a bit of a shambles, because when we contact the housing association, nobody seems to know what's going on. And at the time that the work was being done, there was a huge turnover of project managers. I think we went through 4 or 5 of them in the space of 18 months, and there was a lack of empathy. The conditions that we were living in while that work was being done. I was heavily pregnant. And, I had workmen walking across my window while I was trying to, feed the kids, or, just it was a complete lack of privacy as well. We had a security team in the building who had to be paid for by us because they had torn off so much cladding that they couldn't, and also just in case that anything caught fire, that they had them there just for our safety. And this was months that they had them there. We were paying so much money for these people to be here. It's obviously a knee-jerk reaction to what had happened at the time. And we were also told that, no, you will not be paying for this. But since then, we've seen our service charges increase. I'm paying nearly £6,000 a year.
Oh, wow.
And it is exorbitant for what we're not getting here.
Deepa, thank you so much for letting me know about your situation. Here's Avesh now in Purley. Avesh, how's it going?
Hey, not too bad. How are you?
I'm fine. What's happening with your flat, with your cladding?
Well, the only thing I'm pleased about is at least we can have a conversation about it, because a few weeks ago, no one seemed to care or even wanted to entertain the conversation. So basically, I'm in a slightly different position. We bought a flat in 2018, 11 months after the fire at Grenfell. Got a mortgage, a buy-to-let, because I bought it as an investment to let it out. In May this year, we got a letter from our lender confirming that our fixed mortgage is coming to an end, and they're going to be moving us to a standard variable rate, which is very expensive. In fact, it's double our mortgage costs. To which we contacted our mortgage broker and decided to go for a remortgage. Put in all the applications, got to the point where valuation was conducted, only to find out that actually our property is not really worth anything, and therefore no lender will consider lending against it.
Who told you that?
And obviously, the lender.
Because you don't have the form?
Because we don't have the form. So we queried this. I took this up with, the management of the building, and I decided to, because it was unheard of, so I decided to take it upon myself to research this and contact all the companies who were conducting the survey. Spoken to all of them, had a new fire assessment conducted, had all their information and documentation sent across through to them. 5 out of 6 of them came back and said, we don't think you need this ESW1 form, because in the block that you are at, you're on the ground floor, there's no cladding whatsoever. There is some timber decorative material on a balcony, on a couple of balconies, which is very far away from you. And your building is only 12 meters high. So can you go back to your lender and say to them that, look, you don't fall within this criteria? Went back to the lender and the valuer, and they came back and confirmed, nope, unfortunately, we're not going to do this because this is what it is, and we can't sign off on this. So as it stands, until you have the ESW1 in place, there's no way we can conduct a remortgage for you.
So what are you going to do? Because your mortgage is going to cost you double what you were paying.
It is, and we've been paying that for the last 3 months. So nobody else in the building wants to know about it because they don't require this documentation. It's not a legal obligation for the entire block or the building or all the other freeholders to have it. And our own lender, who we've then spoken to and said, look, this is the position we find ourselves. Can't you put us into a different product or a different rate? To which their response is that, no, unfortunately, given this whole situation with the ESW1, etc., unfortunately, they can't move us onto a different rate. We would have to do a remortgage, and they are not doing any remortgages on any buildings where the valuer may think could require this form. So
Avish, it's so telling listening to you speak with such authority, and Deepa too, clearly becoming experts on things you never thought you'd have to be expert on. I just wonder, we have to go to news, but do you think that part of the cause of this might be the government acting out of an abundance of caution, and you can understand that after Grenfell, have perhaps gone too far or have taken action without thinking through all the consequences, and they've brought an untold number of people into your kind of quandary, and there doesn't seem to be at this moment a way out.
No, there doesn't seem to be. And I think, yes, I can understand the reason why they have this regulation put into place. But at the same time, I don't think that the thought process was done clearly enough in order to basically, consider everybody's options and what the situation is. And effectively what they said is to all the lenders, don't lend on these properties, don't allow people to sell them or buy them or remortgage them unless they have this document in place. But they didn't make it a legal obligation for the owners of the building to have it. And I think really and truly the liability of this should lie down to the local council inspectors, because they allow these properties to get built. They pass through all the building regulations, and now it's down to people like ourselves who've got to foot the bill.
Avesh, very good to hear from you. Thanks very much. We're going to carry on this conversation, of course. 0345 6060 973. Let me know how it is for you. Anthony says, I'm in the throes of selling a flat and was told the purchaser's lender wouldn't agree to a mortgage without an EW1S, even though the flat I'm selling is clearly in a red brick building without cladding. I had to pay £1,200 in order to get the certificate. That's Anthony in Tower Bridge. How's the bridge, Anthony? And Marianne says the EWS1 form, while it's awful to hear all these horror stories, the government need to give clear guidance on when or when not this form is required. I've sold my flat in Birmingham to a first-time buyer, shared building plans to demonstrate no cladding, and lenders still saying this isn't enough. It's causing unnecessary angst and worry for so many people who shouldn't even be going through this. Let me know how it is for you. 6:31 now. Tim Humphrey has the news.